Hello people, and welcome back to part 6 of the Noobs Guide to City Skylines. I hope you're having a wonderful day. And thank you so much indeed for all the support last week when we had a little look at how we can design our first 4-way highway interchange, and you guys seem to really pick up some tips, so I'm glad that it could be helpful. And it's certainly going to help to move traffic around the city a little more efficiently. However, in today's episode, we're not going to do too much expansion, very much going to be talking about the various applications of the Parklife DLC today. So we'll build a couple of different types of park together, probably do a city park and an amusement park. Also talk about how the Parklife props can be used from a detailing perspective, and we'll also set up a Parklife cheese somewhere in the city as well. So, one of my favourite DLCs, and definitely one of the best ever released. Let's play with Parklife, shall we? So we'll get started today just by building a regular city park in our suburban expanse that we started last episode. But one of my favourite things to do with park-like areas is to actually integrate public transport into them. Brings them a lot more life and personality. So where I have this tram line left over from last episode, I'm going to start expanding this now. We're going to bring it through my suburb, straight the way through, and then this looks like a nice sensible place where we can build our Parklife area. Trim up some of the trees, of course, try and save that tree count where you can. Then let's bring this in, and I think I'm going to go for a little circle on the end. Of course, make a little roundabout. No road guideline can be helpful here. And then we'll move out by 2 increments each time. Our distance of 135. There we go, that's going to be a little tram roundabout, so we can treat that as a turnaround point now. So let's open our park menu, and when you have the Parklife DLC, you will have these options for City Park, Amusement Park, Nature Reserve, and Zoo up at the top. Now we have 3 different types of park area. But the first thing we want to do is actually create a new district. So with some of the DLCs, particularly airports, campus, Parklife, and industries, you get 2 new districts to paint out. So that's what we're going to do. Paint out a district using a park district here. We're just going to name this after one of our wonderful Patreon subscribers. I'm going to go for Jennifer Cox Gardens. Thank you so much for all your support, Jennifer. Really do appreciate it. And now that we have this in, we can come back into Parklife and we can place a couple of different main gates. There is a large one and a small. Again, both have kind of different aesthetic appeals. It's entirely up to you which one you want to go for. So I'm going to place a park gate here. You notice that unlocks Jennifer Cox Gardens to level 1. We get park plazas, an info booth, a restroom, and a park cafe. So when we click on the park area now, we will see that we have a couple of bits of information to look at. Total visitors until the next level, we need to have at least 500. And the entertainment level needs to be at least 220. Now, as we add in the assets that we just unlocked, that entertainment level will rise, thus drawing more people to the park area. However, there is a couple of things that we need to bear in mind, and this is the fact that for people to be counted as a visitor towards this number here, they must enter through a gate. If they just walk in through the tram line, which they can do here, then they won't count as a visitor. So let's come back into our Parklife area. Now we're going to place in a side gate. Let's maybe have one over this side, and then maybe one more over here. Okay. Now the wonderful world of Parklife fencing is now available to you. Again, endless detail opportunities with these. So we can have a park fence, and these will snap onto our park gates. Something that can be useful here is just snapping to an angle. Allows you to be a lot more precise with your placements. So I'm actually going to box in this tram line, okay? I don't want people entering the park via the tram line. I'm only integrating the public transport into the park from an aesthetic point of view. So now we can just draw up all these. Might make one corner particularly flat. Some nice opportunities for rock and tree detail in here as well. Now let's start talking about how pathways can stop us from achieving visitors. So again, we'll come back onto our snapping. So you will notice that if I leave a pathway too close to a road, that it will actually register a connection. People can walk through this pathway here, even though it's fenced off, and won't be counted as visitors. So important to bear in mind that if you're wanting a park area to be entirely secure, so people can't just walk into it, then bear that in mind, okay? So I'll link all my pathways through together. I think I'm relatively happy with that, okay? Now let's start placing in some buildings. Okay, if you notice that I'm keeping my paths always curved and not just ending here, because again, it's going to register that connection. Let's come back into Parklife and we can have a look at a few of these assets together. We'll scroll down and we can have Parklife Cafe here. Now these assets can be used away from Parklife areas, and they can be placed on the path here. Kind of the city's services like garbage, police and healthcare. If anyone dies at the park or if there's crime at the park, the service vehicles will report to the main gate. You don't actually have to get to each individual asset within the park itself. And like I was saying, these assets can be used away from park areas, but they must be on the side of a road. So you can use them from decoration points if you want, but we'll have a little talk about that today. Okay, so let's start playing the game, and we'll start placing maybe an info booth up at the front. Okay, and we can grab the restroom, maybe spin this around so it's facing there too. You know, there's plenty more Parklife props as well. You can start getting into placing down tiles if you like, and really customizing these little builds. Parklife definitely one of the more game-changing DLCs. We also get some flower beds here as well. Maybe placing a little triplet of flower beds if you like, okay? There's also some trash cans. Alongside some kind of like food and eatery stalls, so maybe placing like a little hot dog stand here if you like, or an ice cream truck. You know, Parklife makes parks much more customizable, a lot more fleshed out, and a lot more interesting as well, I think. So I'll go ahead and get these watered and powered up. Looks like we've got a little more residential expansion to satisfy as people come through this area, so this should jump the power through. So we'll now extend our tram line. We're going to bring this one up into the park area. And then we can have it stop again a couple of places on its way back through. Let's maybe have it stop just here as well in the suburb. And that's going to complete the tram loop again. And that will hopefully start to see this come together. So in terms of surrounding the park again, all of your zoning techniques and favorite designs and ideas can come into play. I want to surround a little bit with some commercial. You know, feel free to integrate the old vanilla park assets in here as well. You know, if you want to maybe throw down a dog park onto a corner, then we absolutely can do that. You know, let's integrate that into the park itself. Let's shatter the fence, place in a regular dog park, and then just a simple case now of bringing the fence back around it if you want. Okay, you can do exactly the same thing with commercial zoning. Might want to break a little bit of the fence over this side, introduce just a tiny little spot of it. Again, more of a decoration as opposed to meeting demand, but we have that commercial demand, so it will work anyway. And we can bring that down, and everyone's going to be happy. So the public transport doesn't have to be trams, it could be monorail. We'll also work with cable cars today as well, since we introduced mass transit last time. We'll do like a cable car amusement park, which will be quite fun. Okay, but people now coming into this area, again, new content creator trees are also going to be massively helpful for decorating. Let's come in and grab perhaps some of this happier grass. You know, all these little tiny nuances and specks of personality that we add in really contribute towards the final build. Maybe a live oak and a coconut palm in there as well with some of the grasses and the rocks. That'll fill out our tram roundabout. We've got some people waiting for it here as well, deciding to, you know, come down this way too. And people are going to start arriving at the park now the game is playing. Here we go. And this is essentially the base premise of the Parklife DLC now. So you see, visitors are starting to come in. We've hit the entertainment level, again, which is hit by placing in park assets. You can change your pricing if you want. It doesn't really affect the visitor rates. You're just going to make more money out of it. Just slightly reduce the visitor rates, but not to the point where no one ever visits. Okay, and then we've got some plazas that we can place down too. Placing some of these here. So a quick notice to terraforming. It can be a nice idea to terraform park areas before you start building, depending on the park area. And with nature reserves, you don't really need to terraform just because of the nature of them. But with other park areas, like city parks, it can be helpful. So I'm going to back on another cafe here, and let's bring in some more of those tiles again, shall we, to mimic the other side of the flower bed, and we can just create a little kind of central park area here where there's a couple of cafes, a restroom, an info booth. And why not start bringing in some repeated colourful tree patterns as well, if you like. We go for something a little, something not quite as bright as the pink one. And now really, everyone's designs and preferences will change and shift along with the part build. They're very customizable, much more interesting than the regular part DLC. Okay, not too bad. So let's carry on getting this build surrounded, because indeed the surrounds of the park are just as important as the park itself. So we'll start bringing some of these in. So I know, again, this is one of my arterial roads. I want to keep this free as much zoning as possible. I can see an opportunity here again for, you know, perhaps some happier detailing to come through. So we can jump back into our pathways. Let's make this dirt one a little more interesting and meandering, and perhaps it can split off and come down this way too. Again, we'll go for another couple of larger rocks and a couple of small ones too, maybe. Start getting some colourful trees in and different types and variations. Some of the old California palms are always a favourite as well. Date palms too. A couple of live oaks, and then plenty of vanilla overgrowth and detailing is really going to help bring all these little areas that sit around the edge of the park area together just a little bit more. It's going to be one of my favourite episodes, this one. It's going to be a lot of detailing, which is very much what the Parklife DLC brings to your game. Okay, so we can just allow that to sit in alongside the fence now. It's not too bad. We can even discuss the possibility of placing something here but isolating it with a bridge, which would be quite fun. So why don't we have a little look at that? Why don't we grab... Probably would be better to wait for another building to unlock here, but I think what I'll do is just place in a little plaza, and exactly the same way that we have done with other builds in the city. We just want to elevate up. We can come out by 40, and then come up by 102. That seems to do one more elevation step there. And then we can create a little layer of height within the park as well, if you know. Again, similar kind of ideas and themes that we've been working with in this city so far as well. Let's come off road length now as we come back down to earth and have this sit here. And then come into the plaza like that. Notice that it has destroyed my fence, which is fine. Again, you can come off your angle snap with the fence and try and find a sweet spot. It'll come back through, which there is one. Okay. You know, this can hook back through to this side if you like. So everything that we've been playing with, layers of height, elevated points, all this stuff that we're using to make the city more detailed still applies to your park life areas. You know, integrated public transport, layers of walking height. It's all there to add personality into the build. I know it makes a difference. And again, so many different, endless variations of shape and design here. Really is one of the best DLCs. So, while this continues to level up, we are waiting for visitors to come and visit the park, which is great. This will slowly happen over time. Let's go and talk about the other applications of Parklife and set up our next district as well. We do have some ones burned down. It's fine, that should regrow. That's going to be wonderful. So during the interchange episode, I mentioned that park fencing has the ability to essentially function as sound barriers or safety barriers in highway interchanges, especially the zoo fence, which is really nice at it. So if we were to just run this parallel with our main highway road for a little bit, this is easily one of my favorite things to do. There will be a couple of little tight spots maybe where your pillars are sat, but you can just break it and restart it again. Okay, we'll do this on a couple of sides. Let's do the same again on the kind of middle reservations. We'll also add some toll booths into this highway interchange today too, as we come to decorate this side of the city at least. And, you know, what an enormous difference that makes. Just a little bit of fencing between major road infrastructure like this can just add in a whole new layer of personality, right? It doesn't have to be zoo fencing if you want to maybe go for a more kind of run down and older area of the highway. And maybe a little bit of nature reserve fence alongside a water tower and some very base vanilla overgrowths and perhaps some smaller trees as well, maybe some bushes. Okay, maybe a couple of little palm plants. You know, just a nice little spot of personality again in and around your road infrastructure. This same design can also be applied with your roundabouts that we built at the start. nature reserve fencing is going to sit wonderfully in all these gaps where the pathway doesn't meet the road. And then you've just got little spaces to bring in some of that fencing. It's a really small aesthetic touch, but my word, does it make a difference. We can maybe go for some park fencing to replace our repeated bush line here, or indeed, just sit in front of it. And then we can kind of border off this area here as a little bit of fenced high street with some parkland on the opposite side. Indeed, you can turn this area into a very small Parklife area now if you like. So it just opens up all the areas of the city to much more customization and much heavier detailing. For those that are fans of my videos and have been following my channel, you will know we use fencing in every city as much as possible because it adds such a difference of personality, doesn't it? I really like it. Okay, so that's fencing. Can be used again all the way through here. During my detailing time lapse today, I'll come and fill all this with zoo fence, and we'll have a nice time. However, let's have a look at the next park area, and we're going to use this one kind of as like a tourist attraction, right? So the other one's just kind of a regular city park. This one over here, that'll tick along and fill out as we unlock new items for it. But this one is going to be an amusement park, okay? So again, if you don't want to use amusement park here, then you can do a zoo. Entirely up to you. And I'm feeling it maybe against the waterfront, but of course the waterfront needs a little bit of work before we can work with it. Exactly the same principle and process that we did with our nightlife area. So I'm going to come in and grab my level terrain. I'm going to grab the height at the lowest point here. And then I'm just going to terraform against it. And start flattening out a nice wide area here for me to fit in an amusement park build. Again, your position and placements here can be wherever you want it. If you don't want it waterfront, then don't build it here. But as always, cut out a bigger area than you initially need. So once you have your area terraformed out to your chosen specification, I can see an opportunity here because I'm working with the waterfront to actually start introducing some water into the park itself. Again, sticking with that theme today of how we can make not just regular park areas, but park areas a little more interesting. So I'm going to start bringing out some dirt road frames, okay? I'm just going to run this in a straight snapped angle from the nightlife area road. And then let's say in the middle, let's go for out there. I'm going to leave a gap of 10 tiles in the middle. Okay, so this is going to create a nice shape for me. I'm going to come into my curve road tools. So I'm going to create a couple of 5 deep curves here on either side. There we go. Then I'm going to break this right here. I'm going to come into my terraforming tools again. We're going to select a height that is in the water by right-clicking it. And then I'm going to terraform against this shape at a height where the water can actually flow in to the park. So again, let's terraform all out using those dirt roads as your guideline. If you're not happy with the exact shape and parameters of it, then feel free to widen or shorten those curves that we made at the start. Everyone's preference is going to be different here. And then we can let that fill up with water. And as it does, this land will now become land that we can place the keys on. Again, you can use the same keys here. However, at the same time as introducing the Parklife DLC, I would also highly suggest that you pick up the Content Creator Pack, Bridges and Piers. Again, all of these DLCs are available at the instant gaming link down below for ridiculously cheap prices. It's totally legit and it helps support my channel, so if you do use the instant gaming link, thank you very much. But what it does is it gives you access to lots more simple seawalls and seawall keys that can be walked on, and they make an enormous difference in decorating waterfronts. You will need to redraw them here just because the tourism assets are sat there. But we can have a side-by-side comparison here. How much better do they look? And there's many different variations of these too. Lots and lots of them. So that's Bridges and Piers Content Creator Pack. If you want to pick it up at the same time as Parklife, I would highly suggest you do. They are 2 DLCs that complement each other very well. And they simply hook in like this. We can maybe create another connection further down here as well. I have also just noticed that we have some sewage problems in the city. So let's go and address that before it gets any worse. Again, until we introduce Sunset Harbour and hit a milestone where we unlock the water treatment plant, We are still working with our drain pipes, which is fine. Throw that over there, and that should meet our demand for sewage treatment. There we go, wonderful. So yeah, definitely recommend picking up bridges and piers at the same time. You also get some roads with it as well, which is these ones here, which actually have really nice pavement. So if you use the European stone bridge here, look how much nicer the pavement is. Kind of has this tile on it, and the bridge is also very nice as well. So that'd be my suggestion. When you grab Parklife, also pick up the bridges and piers pack as well. Cool. So let's come back into our piers. I'm going to grab my simple seawall keys. And now we can snap onto a road guideline. And we can start drawing in these piers to sit either side of these roads to create kind of a little channel or canal, right? Whatever you want to call it. We can certainly integrate this into the park. I can now see opportunities where this one can also come down on an angle snap, although the shoreline does want a little bit of terraforming just to allow it to sit a little easier. Okay, so there we go. It does take a little bit of work with the shoreline region sometimes, but it does work eventually. Also had to widen out my curve here to 7 unit curves using the dirt road tool. So for those that are wondering, it's a curve of 7. So you find 5 and then 6 and 7. And then repeat that 5, 6 and 7 to get 7 wide curves, which allows you to place in your eventual key shapes. And then once you have all that in, you can trim off your dirt road guidelines and then bring in the rest of your road network. So I want to carry on using my little 2-lane European bridge here. Let's go for another spot there. And let's place in another park area now. So I want to build an amusement park, I think. And we'll go for an amusement park main gate. Now, again, rather than just having this sat on the road, we can maybe give it a little bit more importance with perhaps a unique building, which is not only going to look good, but also help draw more people to the area as well. So let's have a little glance through our uniques and see what we fancy building. Let's go for, how about the helicopter park? Sit up here. Just have the bird on it as well, so maybe that might actually work better with the zoo. Yeah, I think we'll do a zoo instead then. So we'll box this in using our road, and then again we'll dive back into wonderful world of Parklife, and we will grab a zoo main gate this time, and this is going to sit just outside of here, not quite centrally, which is slightly annoying, but we can live with it. It'll be okay. Okay, so again, exactly the same now. Same principle as the city park area. We place a main gate, the park area comes in, and then we unlock a bunch of zoo-themed assets that can now be placed within this park area. We'll also name our zoo after one of our wonderful Patreon subscribers as well. Thanks so much, always support, Ron. Really appreciate it, mate. So with the zoo, again, you want to paint out your Parklife area to the size and space that you want your zoo to occupy. Let's give it a rough area for right now, and we can always, tidy it up once we know the final configuration and shape of the zoo. And exactly like a city park now, it's a case of bringing in pathways and maybe create something of a little kind of opening zoo area where people can arrive and maybe visit a plaza, a couple of souvenir shops, etc. So we can be creative with our asset placement again here. But, in my city, I have a tier that sits here, but what we did with our nightlife area, so I might want to carry on that tier for the zoo as well and terraform all that out. So we also mentioned introducing some public transport into the zoo as well. I think cable cars are going to work really nicely for this. So they do come with the mass transit DLC, which we introduced last episode. If you're playing without it, then just ignore this bit of the build. And then likewise, we can start bringing out some cable cars now. So true to real life, cable car lines always run in a very straight line. Doesn't affect the game, but if you want it to be somewhat realistic, then something to bear in mind. Okay, I'm just going to keep slightly elevating here as we keep moving up, because I know that, we're going to be changing heights and layers here. So we can bring that up. Then we're going to want to place in another end of line stop at the other end of the cable car, of course. But again, you know, this is more public transport convergence now. We're having cycle highway meet with trams and metro, so everyone's going to carry on using public transport. They don't have to walk too far to get to either one. But again, I might want this to sit on its own little stretch of road, so why don't we bring in a little road here? I can maybe again use some of my Parklife props for detailing. Why don't we have a little zoo plaza here that I can box in myself and bring it out on a road like that. If you're going to be doing this, definitely remove the traffic lights here. We don't want two traffic lights this close to each other on a main road. That's going to be bad news, bears. Slightly annoying I can't get it to snap in there. I could redraw the road, but we can detail that out. And then again, I can now place in my end of line stop here on this side. Okay. And then we can connect these in. And then that will just flow. So with cable cars, you don't need to draw in that line. They will just start operating once they are connected. And this is going to give us a cable car that now flows across our zoo. So just another example of how we can make public transport a little more interesting, and the park life areas a little more interesting as well, just by integrating them into part builds. And there's various examples of this kind of across my series as well. So likewise now, as we continue to add in assets into the park area, the Ron Huin Zoo will meet its entertainment level and continue to grow. So let's start doing that. Let's go in and grab some zoo pathways, which are certainly some of the nicer pathways in the game. Okay. And then we can start placing in some actual zoo attractions now, which are pretty big. So looks like we can place in like a birdhouse here. And likewise, these assets also work nicely against the road in kind of self-built park areas. So you can place a zoo building in here. Likewise, you can also mix and match zoo assets into different types of park life areas. So I can place my zoo assets in the city park if I want. Doesn't all have to be the same one. Okay. Wonderful. So again, now everyone's space and style is going to be different, of course, depending on what map you are playing on. So let's go ahead and start mapping out some initial pathway infrastructure for our zoo to occupy. I know I'm also going to want the road to come over here as well, so why don't we do that now? Let's come into a 2-point elevation on a 5-step. It looks like we can cross over just about perfectly there. There's a touch of glitching onto the key, but I don't particularly mind that. And we can do 620 back down the other side. Again, using our redraw trick. Okay, there we go. That sorts it out, doesn't it? Pushes it off. There's enough height clearance there for people to walk through. And then the road network can now extend and go into whatever we end up building over here in however many episodes' time. Okay. And again, everything that we've talked about in the series so far, we can maybe place in, you know, a zoo side gate here if you want another entrance point into the zoo, then of course you can. But asset orientation is of course very important, as with everything else that we've built in cities so far. So I can maybe place in... Actually, this is a good point to talk about the zoo assets. So some of the zoo assets have pathways built into them, like the reindeer enclosure here. So they can be a little bit awkward for snapping sometimes, but we can work with it. So let's have this one here. And then I want to bring in the zoo and reindeer enclosure to sit about here, hopefully. Again, I'm having it sat against the road for detailing purposes as well. And then this can then come down. And then it reads as a connection, which is going to be nice. And then we have a antelope enclosure, which again, I can just place onto the pathways. And this is where our zoo fencing is going to come in really handy again as well. For detailing against the road network. We can maybe have it run without a road length from the corner of the road. Just where we can squeeze it, probably go with the grass line. Let's have that come in there. This can go down. And content creator trees. Going to be really nice for decorating these areas too today. Especially in a tropical theme map like Diamond Coast. Get some of these new palms in. Of course, if you're in the boreal theme, then you know, your boreal pines will work nicely here. And maybe kind of a little pop of colour in between each tree. And then your detailing options are endless and open to you now. So if you're really enjoying the detailing aspect of the game, Parklife really flashes it out. Okay, so as always, we want to make sure that we're continually meeting the demands for the park to move up to its levels, for which we are at the minute. We are way over the entertainment value, and now it's just a case of waiting for the visitors to come in. We'll hopefully see some people using the cable car. 68 already last week. Let's see how it's performing up near the top as well. 60 in this one. Again, people can jump straight off. So one thing you do want to look out for when looking at your public transport is how many people are walking once they get off. And you can see, just as a little brief example here, we have trams over in the corner. There's also cycle network through this part of the city. Cable car and metro now, and no one is choosing to drive once they get off. They're all switching from one method to another, or walking to their destination thanks to all the walking pathways that we've put in from a detailing perspective. We're now seeing all this starting to come through. And that can be expanded now because we're working with different tiers. Let's start playing with this idea over here. Let's start terraforming out some more layers, and we can maybe put some cafes up here and start playing with elevated zoo pathways. Okay, terraform out and push this against here. Switch out to a larger brush. Again, with terraforming jobs like this, as with the nightlife area, things will look pretty ugly before they start to look good. So just bear with it. Just keep terraforming out different layers and heights as you need them. Okay. Let's have a little chat here. So with this path, I could just bring it up the side of the hill, which is fine. It will naturally terraform to the best of the game's ability, but elevated zoo path is by far and away the best looking path in the game, because it has this little dangly grass on it, which looks amazing. It's something that we absolutely love on the channel. So we can see that we drew out by 60. It's actually probably a good idea to come on with road length to do this, so let's take that path away. So we'll come out by 40 each time, and then each step of 40 we will elevate up. And then it looks like we can come back down to earth here. So now we can start playing with different path heights. Come off all our snapping here as we start bringing it around the edge. Again, if you want to switch to the version with decorations, then the elevated zoo path does have some nice sort of green tree variations here. And I can now just let this hug the side of this terraform layer that we've already dug out. And I can start to place some new park assets up on this level. And again, if I want to bring in that elevated zoo path style, I can come back to my road length and angle snapping. It would be nice if we could get this somewhat aligned in the middle. And there's going to be a good spot, isn't it? We can come out by 62. So you notice how it creates a path connection there. So because people can actually walk on the walkable seawall keys, that actually will count as a path connection in and out of the park area. But they have to walk basically from here to get to it, so the AI will probably still prefer the gate. We'll see how it works. We'll leave it connected. Now let's come out by another 62 on this side. And then get a nice straight connection up into there. And we can start creating different layers of height within the park area now. And we can maybe start placing in some of these cafes and souvenir shops around this. Make this kind of a little point of interest in the park area. Something of like a little community hub, if you like. I'm sure many of us have been to a zoo before. Again, doesn't have to be zoo assets. If you want some of the park life assets, maybe you're absolutely in love with the City Park Cafe, then you can place them in here as well. It will still count towards the entertainment value. So you see we've got a mascot on the key now. So I am happy to have people walking on the key. I just don't want too many because it's going to stop them from coming through the main gate. Okay, but already now, playing with the layers and the public transport in the park, I hope we can all agree it's a much more interesting use of a park life and public transport, isn't it? Very nice. So of course now, both parks just need to hit their levels. We can see that we are getting some issues in the city. It looks like the power consumption has dropped off, so we will need to fix this. Again, it's just a case of placing in another power plant. Like I mentioned at the start of this series, we will get to the point where we kind of relocate all our power surfaces into a dedicated power plant build. But for right now, it's not particularly needed. Looks like we've got some houses or buildings that are burnt down too. Just do a little bit of admin, come through and clear any problems that are happening up. I got a touch of abandonment over here as well. That's no problem. Let's just delete them. If a building is historical and it abandons, you do need to delete it. It won't just automatically regenerate. We're also getting some spikes in industrial demand too. Although next episode we will start playing with the Industries DLC. So let's just come in and zone up a little more industrial. In our very rancid, horrible industrial area. That's here at the minute. Okay, maybe back some new industry up onto our highway interchange that we built last episode too. You know, whilst you're continuing to build your park life areas, just keep your eye on the city in general. So let's talk about park policies. If we click on the park life area, we have a tab here for policies. And there are a couple of things that we can apply to increase the attractiveness of the park. Some specific to specific park life areas. For example, animal ethics will do nothing in a city park area that has no zoo assets because there's no animals here. But we can put on an advertisement campaign which will draw 20% more visitors and cost us 200 a week, which we're making 17,000 a week at the minute, so that's nothing. We can put that on. We can also mark the park as a main park, which will draw more tourists to it. You can have a fine for fireworks, doesn't really do anything. Fireworks will go off around the park areas. And even more fun, which is specific to amusement parks, and then recycled garbage is exclusive to nature reserves. So there's a couple of little policies you can apply to your park areas to help them level up a little bit faster if you want to. Love the tramway coming through the park now. Such a nice integration, isn't it? Do it with monorail as well. Again, if you play with mass transit. It's all very exciting. It's great playing with park life. Anyway, let's also have a look at public transport tab, because with the Park Life DLC, we also get the option for hot air balloons and tours to come in. So sightseeing tours. So first of all, we'll place in a hot air balloon tour because these things can just be placed. So you'll notice as we select these assets that the heat map changes, and this changes into a blue and purple. Intense spots of purple are things that Sims will find interesting to visit. So these are places where you want to bring in your sightseeing tours, because they're going to want to see these sorts of places, okay? And likewise with your walking tours as well, but these are kind of more specific for nature reserves, I find. But either way, let's place in a... Oh, here we go. We have a noise pollution value complaint. There we go. Let's see here. So we haven't come across this before. Citizens are sick. We have a little sad X green face with a pair of headphones on. This is noise pollution. Let's find out why. Put on our noise pollution graphic. We can see that there is a ton of noise pollution emanating from the high density commercial. So this is a good point now, just to remove this guy and allow this space to sit free, so no one else grows there, because he's a little too close to high density commercial for him to survive and be healthy. So just remove him. Okay, so let's place in our hot air balloon tours. We'll see where we can maybe squeeze this in. So again, it's a asset that has 0 noise pollution, so we don't have to worry too much about placing it too close to residentials. And why don't we have it in here? Then we can let that fly away. So they'll just fly around the city, okay? You can click on the building and see how many people have visited it. It's a nice addition to the Skylines to have hot air balloons flying around, actually. So that's it. That's a hot air balloon. Really simple and easy to use. And let's set up a sightseeing tour as well. So again, the bus depot, as our regular public transport buses, is a loud asset, so I think it's going to be more than appropriate to have it sat within our industrial area, and I might want to use it as a main building decoration here. Now, it's an important service asset, so give it somewhere where it's going to fit in a little more. And then you'll notice that our sightseeing bus stop now becomes available to use, and we can place this to come and serve the area. However, currently we don't have a end of line connection here, so let's terraform this one out at this point, just so we can create a little turnaround loop using a one-way road. That out. Of course, eventually this side of the city will expand into something. We'll do a little 5 deep roundabout here. and then we can draw in our sightseeing tours. So I'm going to have a stop here outside the zoo. They can then come down into the nightlife area. So just keep them heading towards the main points of interest around the city, okay? So we can see there's maybe, a stop here where they might want to stop at this parkland. Then maybe a stop over by the botanical garden. Through here as well, where there's another big spot of purple. And then again, I could take them over here and feed them through the highway interchange, which I think we will do. Got another pollution graphic here too. I will showcase what this means in a minute. And then we'll stop by here. And you can come through this area. And that seems like a good point to conclude the tour. Again, as it passes back through the area, you can maybe add a stop at another point of interest here. And then likewise with the rest of our public transport, once we've drawn in a line, you will see the buses start heading out onto their tour line. Okay, again, likewise, you can change the ticket price in here. You can change the number of vehicles. I think 24 is way too much. So I'm going to bring it back down to like 11. Again, as they spill out, there will be an initial batch of traffic just as the vehicles settle into the vehicle ecosystem, if you like. So just give it a hot minute and everything will settle down. So let's put some policies on our zoo now. Let's go for animal ethics, which is going to boost the entertainment effect of the zoo buildings by 20%. That sounds good. I'm also going to throw on a main park and an advertisement campaign, just because it's going to help bring much more people to the zoo. Okay, and we can see now opportunities here where we might want to do some more fence detailing. So I might want to add a splash of... Oh, there's Big City as well. We do get a new tile and a bunch of new stuff as well. Wonderful, wonderful. That's the next milestone, 16k. So I'm going to add in a little spot of commercial here, and then let's start decorating this new area. Let's add in a little pathway here to continually increase that walkability, alright? Some fencing is going to be massively appreciated here now, perhaps. Some nature reserve or indeed zoo fencing would be a good point here, but I think I'm going to go for nature reserve. Just because I want people to kind of see it over. Might not be the safest solution. And let's just run this in nice long stretches as we descend down into the nightlife area. Okay, so that's going to kind of fence off this cliff face here, and lots of rocks and overgrowth detailing is going to be nice for building out these areas. We can use some of these rock decals to decorate up the cliff face if you want. Some smaller rocks along the top, and then lots of overgrowth here. Some repeated tree patterns will be appreciated as well, alongside some of the content creator grasses. So, this is all where the detailing fun comes into it now. Everyone will find pleasure in different aspects of the game. And then some palms. Once these commercials do come in, we'll start to fill out a little bit of a square here, where we do have a fractured pattern where the nodes weren't so kind to us. Let's do a little bush ring. Maybe the tree in there too. So we'll fill out that corner. And then just see this little square, little kind of plaza frontage come to life a little bit more. Start to develop a transition into the zoo behind us. Again, if you're happy with the assets that are coming in, don't forget to come through and historical them, so you don't get any kind of gnarly looking commercial that really breaks your vibe. Just look at this little street corner now, right? Lots of people taking public transport. There's more opportunities for fencing here as well if you want. There's going to be a lot of fencing today. We can come in with some park life stuff, some regular city park fencing, and just create a little bit of a border around a central tram area here. You don't have to. It's all... doesn't really make it a change to the game. There's no kind of gameplay improvements that comes from using fencing like this, but it certainly adds in just a little bit more, a little bit of something into the build, doesn't it? When you have these little fenced off areas, kind of marks them out as, this is a tram stop. It's not just a bit of open parkland, it's something that's been specifically built and tailored to the area. That's what a difference it makes, right? It's a little bit of fencing to encompass this area now. Likewise, it backs onto more nature reserve fencing as we drop off the cliff face and, you know, down onto a different layer. So it's all very exciting, isn't it? It really is. But either way, that is about as much as we can do until we hit the next levels. So I'll wait for both park areas to level up, and then we'll be right back. So the run here in Zoo has just hit level 2, which unlocks a couple of new Zoo assets for us, including the Bison Enclosure, which is another asset that comes with paths pre-drawn onto it, so we'll place that one in a minute. And then we also have the Insect and Amphibian Reptile House as well. So again, we're going to place this one in just where we can around our current infrastructure. I think that's going to be fine. Again, I'm placing it just slightly off of the pathway, but it's close enough that it will still read as a connection. And just to help flesh out the texture between the path and the amphibian house, I can use some of those same Parklife tiles just to bridge the gap. Okay. A little bit something like that. Very nice. Let's also get the Bison Enclosure in as well. So again, I know I'm going to need to do a touch more terraforming. So let's grab our layer and then just push that back. That should be enough for right now. Again, you can clear out your trees if you want beforehand. We'll save that tree count. Let's give it a little brush. Depends how much patience you have. Again, if you're on the PC, download the Forest Brush mod. It is an enormous quality of life improvement. Do let me know if you guys want me to put together a list of kind of the best game engine quality of life mods that aren't game changing, like Move It or in the intersection marking tool. You know, stuff like Forest Brush that just makes the game much more easier to play. Let me know if you guys want that in the comments. So let's come on to a Bison Enclosure. And again, this one is a really nice one. It has an elevated zoo path already integrated into it, which is great. So again, I'm going to align this up with the path network. And everyone can now hook into it. You can maybe start breaking the angle here. Bring up a couple of different shapes and sizes. Okay. And that's going to add in. Again, just double checking that we are meeting our entertainment value, which we are very much meeting the entertainment value. Alright, so whilst we're waiting for these Parklife areas to level up, let's discuss the introduction of Parklife cheese into the city for the first time. So Parklife cheese is an exploit using the Parklife DLC where you essentially force people to pay to cross a distance. This is especially effective outside of public transport hubs to use Parklife cheese because you end up paying a ton of money. I will leave an example of extreme Parklife cheese, a clip of Palaven in the video at this point where we have trains meeting on the outside of the city to bring them into an internal train network. So right here I can see an opportunity for Parklife cheese, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to shatter all these connections here. Now where do we want to bring you down? Possibly over here is going to be the most appropriate, isn't it? So clear out a couple of my trees. So we're going to place in a regular city gate, just a small one. Small park main gate. I'm going to bring this straight across. Okay, we're going to name this park after another one of our wonderful Patreon subscribers. We're going to go for Kirsten's cheese. Thank you so much for all your support, Kirsten. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being a patron. And then we're placing a side gate because a park area can only have one main gate, so we go down to a side gate for this one. And then you can use any pathway you want, doesn't really matter which. I will just stick with Parklife path because that's what I'm using at the minute. Likewise with all the other park areas, make sure that there's no kind of glitched connections back onto the road network. Everyone has to enter through a gate here. I'm going to bring out our little elevation points, sort these back in. Upgrade this into the park pathway to ground and then back into there. Again, it's a little unsafe maybe to be walking this close to the highway, so some fencing can be appropriate here if you want. Again, everyone's preference is different. And now we can come into Kirsten's cheese, whack up the ticket price, and people now have to pay to cross over the highway. So this is the base essentials of Parklife cheese. Very effective, makes you a ton of money consistently every single week. So we'll just kind of wait for this one to kick in once the park area is coming through. Just another tip to bear in mind with Parklife, you don't want to immediately elevate out of a gate because it doesn't actually count as a connection. They will just kind of walk off the road onto the elevation point, so make sure there's a little bit of path on the ground before you come into an elevation. And that can stop a Parklife cheese from working. There you go. So it's currently made like 800 quid in its first week, and as more things appear on each side of this bridge, there's more reason for people to walk back into. You will continually make more money. So that's Parklife cheese. Again, there'll be clips in the video today of insane Parklife cheese. So here we go. We now have an example of what I was talking about. So you see how people are just walking through the connection here and ignoring my gates. So these aren't being counted as visitors. So this is what we want to be wary of, okay? So with that in mind, I know that I need to break this connection here because that's where they're coming through. Now, hopefully we can come out on a different angle here. If not, we will need to find a slightly different elevation point to come out from. Yeah, so that's fine. That's not going to be a good point to elevate up and over. Let's do it from this side instead, maybe. See if we can bring the elevation point straight up and across. It looks like we can maybe squeeze in a nice little curved ramp here to fix that issue. So it's good that we've encountered it. Kind of shows off the point because I think it's kind of hard to explain unless you've experienced it before. So bring in a little curved ramp here. Again, it's going to maintain that elevation. But this time, it's going to stop people from glitching in and out of my park area. They now will start using the main gate as it's intended to. So if you find your park areas are taking a long time to level up, that's probably why, because visitors aren't actually being counted as visitors. Because they're just walking into the park. Now, be very careful of that if you're using public transport as well. And fantastic, Jennifer Cox Gardens has just gone to level 2, so we have new assets that we can place. And don't come into this thinking that every park you make has to hit level 5. You know, because I've hit a level 2 zoo now, which is this one over here, if I wanted to come in and place the level 2 assets in another zoo, then I can do. I don't need to wait for them to hit level 2 again, like a different zoo area. And, you know, not every park has to be this enormous, sprawling city park. It can just be a level 2 or 3. So I think that can help you maintain control of your park areas sometimes. I think people come into it thinking it has to be level 5 and they end up with these massive, sprawling, relatively ugly park areas that are just kind of spammed with assets and no thought or placement into them. Don't go into it thinking that. You don't have to get to level 5. So we've also unlocked a couple of piers here, but because this is an inland park, I can't really use them here. However, they can be used from a decoration perspective, again, alongside our waterfront, if I wanted to. Of course, because they're not in a park area, they do need to be close enough to a road in order for them to actually register as connected. So just bear that in mind if you're going to place them. So I think I'll place in a couple of these little park piers alongside my waterfront here, which is going to continually expand my waterfront vibes, if you like, okay? And amazing, the Ron Huin Zoo has just hit level 3, which gives us a sea life enclosure, a flamingo enclosure, and an elephant enclosure as well. So let's add these in, come back into our zoo tab, scroll along to our new assets, where we can find the flamingo enclosure, which is another asset that has its own pathways built into it. So again, you're going to want to factor that into your zoo's design. Let's definitely start bringing it up and off here maybe. And now I've got those bottom assets in, I know that this is where my final tier can sit now, so I can terraform up and against that. Again, kind of as a guideline. Clear out some of the trees, again depending on how patient you are with your tree count. If you want to save them, then you can do here. Would recommend you do it, it's just good practice to get into really. There we go. So I'm now unhappy with this one right here. Let's come in and re-amend this zoo path layout. Go for an angle snap here, seems pretty sensible. We'll hopefully be able to bring that one straight up as well. That's great news. Let's come back into a path without decorations. Often find if you do too many paths with decorations, things can just become a little bit too spicy. There's just too many trees. So let's place the sea life enclosure first. So this one, very much like the piers from the City Park DLC, wants to be placed in and around water because you can see it wants a shoreline to place it. So unless your shorelines are in your Parklife area, and has a gate between it, people will be able to visit this asset without paying, but I'm not too bothered about that. It's only one attraction. It's going to help me detail and decorate my waterfront here. So I'm happy for the sea life enclosure to sit on this space. You could even sort of bring it over this way if you want and extend the park life area out so it encompasses the water. Might be a nice idea to use up this awkward space here. So you can relocate that one in. Alright. Again, I'm happy enough with it. Make sure that it gets some water. So I would like the elephants in. That would be quite a nice aesthetic. So let's see just how much space this boy takes up. It would be easier if we could snap it here. So with that in mind, I think I'm going to temporarily relocate the flamingos whilst we accommodate the elephants. Let's come into these. We'll go for elephant enclosure here. Yeah, it's a big, important looking asset. The elephant enclosure one comes with its own fencing. You know, look how much more interesting this is now. Little tiered park. Lots of people moving around, and of course it's not even decorated yet once we've got our repeated tree patterns in and little nuances of detail that we're starting to get used to introducing. This is going to be a really nice area indeed. I'm going to terraform out a touch more land than I need. And then we'll go for the flamingo enclosure again, which hopefully is going to be relatively happy. Start here. Bring those park connections in if you want. Start to generate some more interesting park patterns, which again lends itself very nicely to content creator trees to come in and start decorating it. So hopefully now we should start to see people actually using these bridges to move back and to between the different tiers of the park. And we've now hit a level 4 zoo, which gives us the monkey palace and the giraffe enclosure, which is great news. Let's add these in as well. Let's go for monkey palace right here. So we can squeeze him in along next to the antelopes, which is great. And then some giraffes as well. We are quickly running out of room in this zoo though. So I think I'll probably leave it. I think we're still at the entertainment level for level 5. Yes, we are. I don't really need to add in the giraffes to be fair, but I guess we could do maybe here and kind of round off the zoo. So let's go for that level terrain again. Again, deciding which layer you want it on. I think I'm happy to continue my little tiered system here and push out another layer at this point. Okay, and then let's have our giraffes set up here. They should have quite a nice view from up there, right? I'm going to be happy with that. Then let's use our terrain tools to create a little slope up until this area. Right. Slope that out a little bit. Come back in and grab your zoo pathways. Elevate this if you like. Come out by a little straight section first of all. And then we can hopefully start to meander down and curve into the bottom layer of the zoo. If you want to elevate it, you can. I'm definitely feeling not the trees here though. Okay, tie that into there if you want, and there's opportunities again for the same thing to be happening here. Nice little meander, and then hook it in there. And again, plenty of zoo fencing is going to be great for giving this thing a little bit of a boundary. So there's one more building I want to talk about before we move into a detailing time lapse, and this is the park maintenance building. So under our park tab, we have this icon over here for park maintenance, and there is only one building in here, which is the park maintenance building. So this will send out vehicles that travel around the city to boost the parks, increasing their entertainment value and their radiuses. And it's quite a nice looking building, actually, is the park maintenance building, and it doesn't have any noise pollution value, so you don't have to be too wary about where you're placing it. But I'm thinking maybe up and alongside my tram depot here. I think actually maybe the opposite orientation is going to be favourable. You know, it's going to serve its purpose, but it also blends in very nicely with my tram maintenance idea that we introduced a couple of episodes ago when we started playing with these little tram maintenance shards. The park maintenance building fits very nicely alongside this sort of design, likewise with the tram depot as well. So I'm just going to have this over here, and you'll see these little cars now with the kayaks on them. They're going to go and travel around to all park areas, not just park life assets. You see he's driving to the Bouncy Castle Park at the minute. This is a regular park asset from the base game. It's going to increase its entertainment and its value, thus increasing land value and people's happiness. So super easy building to use, definitely place them in. However guys, that does feel like a wonderful place for a detailing time lapse though. As the parks continue to move through their levels, I will add in different assets as and when I feel like them. Won't add in every asset. Remember, like I said, not every park has to hit level 5. It doesn't have to be this massive sprawling park area that fills half your map just to get it up to level 5. Don't go into it with that mindset. Build them till it fills the space that you're comfortable with, and then design it so it looks nice. But either way, with our detailing, we're going to make these fit in a lot more with lots of repeated tree and fence patterns. I'm going to come through onto my highway as well and bring the zoo fence all the way through so it acts as like a crash barrier. And then come over to this park as well, start bringing in lots of natural trees around the tram line, and then add in some park assets as Jennifer Cox Park pops up to level 3. And then I'll also add some toll booths into the highway today as well, which are just on your road tab. Under their road tolls, we have a couple of toll booths. These are essentially just Parklife cheese for your roads. People have to pay to come through them. Very effective when placed on major highways because people's going to have to pay to come through them. So good little money earner. So I'll integrate some into the highway interchange from last episode. And then all of the little bits of detailing, bits and pieces. As always, we will be right back. Okay guys, that is going to do it for today. I'd like to thank you all so much for watching. If you've enjoyed the episode, likes, comments and shares below really help me out equally as much. If you haven't enjoyed it, please feel free to leave a dislike as well. If you've really enjoyed it and have found my work useful, there are links to support me down below. I hope you've managed to pick up a few tips today of how we can work with much more dynamic and interesting park life areas, included but not limited to bringing water features into them like we have done with the zoo, integrating public transport into the parks like we have done today with cable car and tram. And that doesn't have to stop at cable car and tram, you can also do monorail, metro, public transport integration with parks. In my opinion, makes them a lot more interesting. We've only really touched the surface here today as well. There are of course nature reserves which can be really huge and fill out much more natural looking mountainous spaces alongside the amusement parks, which is probably my least favourite of the 4 parks that are added. Next episode, we will either dive into green cities or industries. I think industries just because the city's kind of looking for that big industrial overhaul, and I'm looking forward to getting stuck in some forestry too. So we'll probably do industries next. But do hang around for the cinematics and check out these new park areas as they settle into the city's ecosystem. But otherwise, I will shut up and we'll leave it there. I'd like to thank you all so much for watching, and as always, enjoy the rest of your day.